Welcome to Seminole Sidelines. Thank you for joining us Sunday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern, with Curt Weiler, senior writer of the Osceola. I'm Bob Ferrante, the Osceola's editor. We're going to spend about 30 minutes here talking some Florida State football. We'll give some second thoughts on Florida State's win over Virginia Tech. A few recruiting updates, a little bit of big picture discussion too about the Seminoles, now 5-0, ranked number 4 in the nation after Texas's loss to Oklahoma. Florida State is the beneficiary, moves up a little bit, and Syracuse is next, noon Eastern on ABC at home at Doak Campbell Stadium. Yes, Madison Social, I know noon games suck, but this is what the TV network's like. And I think it also maybe speaks to the Florida State brand that the networks like this noon slot now all of a sudden these last few years. So Florida State getting a premier slot here, Curt. I think in some degrees from a TV perspective, maybe not the tailgating fan in stadium perspective.
Yeah, we've as a college football model, it's definitely moved away from, I think, a lot of all the best games are at night. I think they kind of want to put great games and space them out in every window. And I think, isn't Ohio State Penn State's next week, right, at night? And so I think there's a case for ESPN of like, we don't want to put Florida State against that. We know Florida State can do numbers, but it'll be harder going up against that. It's Oregon, Washington, or there's something at night. I forget what it is, but either way, it's it's 5 or 6 on ABC, which I think the channel matters more than the time slot too. I think it's obviously the Florida State brand remains strong, especially when things are going right like they have been this season.
And there's something to be said. I think Game Day does want to push good games. Coming out of ESPN's Game Day, they want to say, okay, coming up next on ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, et cetera, are these games. This is the type of brand that makes you want to just hit the button and go over to ABC, watch the Seminoles, even though the matchup with Syracuse may not be too good. And we'll get into that a little bit later because they got crushed by North Carolina. But guys, we have on our site our Second Look Sunday, some good thoughts from Jerry Cutts. Curt Weiler's weighed in there. Kind of breaking down certain plays, what went right, what went wrong in that second quarter at times too. But Curt, let's kind of go, through just your big picture thoughts here. Second look at Florida State's offense. What kind of came to mind as you rolled through some of these plays this afternoon?
Yeah, the first quarter was just as remarkable, really, as it looked last night. I kind of commented, the thing to me is, I think they had one play over 21 yards and they scored 3 touchdowns in a quarter. There wasn't, you think often if you're scoring that much, it's hitting huge plays. That was not the case. None of Florida State's, the touchdown, I think was a 28-yard run by Lawrence Toafili was the long play of that chunk. But on the whole, it was not a bunch of explosives. It was just, I don't think we think that highly of that Virginia Tech defense, but it's not a worse team in the ACC level. It's not a group of 5 level by any means. We saw what they did last week to Pitt. And I don't know. It's the frustration in a way of what we saw in the first quarter. We see the moments of brilliance again. Things like you think you're trending towards the best half since probably for the offense since the second half of that LSU game. And then they barely had the ball in the second quarter because Virginia Tech had it for so long. And obviously some I think Mike Norvell called adversity that went into that. But, a big deal, I think, that they got the run game going. Obviously, I think you want to see it an extended thing before you truly buy, like, oh, the run game's back. But Trey Benson needed a game like that. He talked about, like, during the bye week thinking it was close. I'm not sure he knew he was going to kind of break through like he did once the dam finally broke. That was a darn impressive game from him. So much of it came on 2 runs. And it wasn't the traditional Trey Benson power game. It was, we hear about the speed. I know he often talks about thinking he could beat Jordan and Jared Verse in a race. Maybe so. From what we saw on those 2 runs, how he outran some defenders who definitely thought they had angles on him. Maybe he is the faster than those 2 guys and one of the faster on the team, low key.
Yeah, so hats off to the ground game. I think almost all of us had this as a key, going into the game, that you had to establish that ground attack. You knew it was a weakness of Virginia Tech, but you had to exploit it and put this game out of hand early. It looked like it was getting out of hand early, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But But I thought Florida State establishing that run, especially with Bless Harris not able to go, especially moving Darius Washington around yet again, the Swiss Army knife coming in very handy again for Florida State in different roles, right tackle, left tackle. Curt, what I love, I think we did mention this within the game thread, but Florida State, again, going heavy, going to tight end sets. There will be lots of questions about why Jaheim Bell was not used as much. I think 7 snaps is what you had out of the PFF snap count for Jaheim, but using 2 tight ends overall to help get the run game going, to help build some successful drives. I think we're seeing different personnel groupings, different maybe personnel within that 2 tight end set, but we are seeing a successful formula for moving the ball on the ground when you have those kind of tight ends out there.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what Mike Norvell says about Jaheim Bell and only playing, I think it was 7 snaps. But Kyle Morlock definitely took advantage. I mean, even in the passing game, I think he got burned as a blocker. And I think he started a good number of their games, maybe even more than Jaheim Bell, honestly. But I think he had 5 catches all year. He had 4 catches in that game. And Marquise and Douglas didn't have a catch, but got, I think, more burn as a blocker because Jaheim appeared to be limited. I mean, that seems like about the only takeaway. It's hard to imagine it would be a coach's decision. He would only play 7 plays without some more context there. But Marquiston, in the second watch, I kind of highlighted. I mean, had a few key blocks on some of the big runs and big moments. So he made the most of the opportunity and kind of, I think, reminded people of, hey, he's probably still the best blocking tight end outside of maybe Preston Daniel that they have on the team.
We were also talking during the bye week about some younger players or some players coming off of an injury that we wanted to see out of Florida State coming off this bye. I think the name at the top of our list was Ja'Kai Douglas, maybe even some Kentron Poitier. We saw a good bit of both. It's unfortunate that Ja'Kai couldn't have that successful positive with a catch, but one ball was literally right there, a little bit underthrown. I think he could have maybe had that one, but at least he was targeted. He was involved. It felt like there was an effort to get the ball to Ja'Kai. Just kind of your thoughts on him, Kentron, just getting some other pieces in the mix there.
When he's been out there, Jordan has always loved those deep balls to Ja'Kai. It's kind of been his guy for that type of stuff. And I think one, you're right, it was a little underthrown. I think one, he would tell you he should have caught, and I think the other, if given truth serum, he would tell you that he was interfered with. I think the defender kind of grabbed him by like the horse collar area almost to slow him down so that he could catch up to him and break the pass up. And frankly, Mike Norvell talked about in the press conference. I don't think he even said like if that penalty's called, but he's like, if that ball's caught, then the game's totally different. Because that's, mind you, that's when Florida State was up 22-0. That would have made 29-0. And it feels like the more out of hand it got, the more VT would have laid down potentially. But Ja'Kai targeted a few times. I think PFF gave him 2 drops, which I thought was pretty harsh, frankly. I guess it kind of has to be a drop if they're not throwing the PI, but it feels like context is important there. But I don't know. It feels like it's nice to see him back. Like you said, Kentron as well. I don't know if Kentron was targeted. I think it might have been targeted and not had a catch. I don't remember offhand, but those guys will be a big deal. I guess Johnny Wilson said he's fine, but especially Kentron could be a big deal next couple of weeks if Johnny's not immediately back in action. We'll have to see what's up with him tomorrow from Mike Norvell.
Yes, Mike Norvell will talk about 11:30 Monday morning. Don't expect too many details as usual about injuries, but of course the questions will be asked. And of course the questions will be asked, how do you adjust in the event of no Johnny Wilson? We'll kind of get into that a little bit later too. Okay, second thoughts on FSU's defense. I think the big overall thought is Florida State pitched a shutout in the second half. You can't count that special teams return against the defense. It was a true shutout by the defense in a half. I think it also follows up a really good second half in overtime against Clemson. So we've seen moments where the Florida State defense has bent at times, yes, but at really, really key moments, especially these second halves, has really stood up pretty well. Curt, second half, as you kind of went through, looked at the defense. We don't think super highly of this Virginia Tech team, but Caron Drones is a mobile quarterback. He did break off a couple big early runs, but just your thoughts on maybe the second half defense.
Yeah, so they did pitch the second half shutout. I know, I mean, Mike Norvell made a point of speaking out about his pride about that because the only touchdown in the second half for VT came on that opening kickoff. Um, I don't think, I mean, frankly, I don't think they were as good as in the second half as they were in the first quarter. I mean, they came out with like their pants on fire. They were swarming to the ball. They were contesting every catch. They were just, I mean, it was 3 straight 3-and-outs. I don't think they picked up a first down until their fourth series of the game. And even then, I think that roughing the passer penalty that Mike Norvell loved that negated the interception would have obviously, I mean, made that, I think, 4 3-and-outs or 4 ineffective drives in a row to start. In the second half, I mean, VT moved the ball. I think, like you said, they clutched up a bit. I think Florida State got lucky in a few moments of, I mean, I think it's possible that they had a screen, DT did, that might have gone for a touchdown if their lineman hadn't been tripped up by their running back hadn't been tripped up by a lineman. I think it was not as good, I don't think, in the second half, but anytime you're shutting anyone out over a half, I mean, that does have to be commended. I mean, I think there's a world where, especially when things really started snowballing on Florida State there in the second quarter into the third, where the defense, I mean, just couldn't get a stop, and that was a one-score game into the closing moments. But it is a testament to the defense. I mean, we talk about Jared Verse finally getting home. He's been impactful. It's not to say he hasn't been impactful, but he got the first 2 sacks of the season. I tweeted out the clips and shared them in the thread. I mean, really impressive. Just like when he gets a move off like that, when he times up a snap that well, when he has his speed, there's really nothing an offensive tackle or an offense can do really to stop him. But yeah, I think it's a credit to the defense that, I mean, the bend but don't break was definitely there, and they kept it from being a game Florida State had to sweat out. I mean, it really feels like there wasn't much sweating for Florida State once Trey Benson's first long touchdown won. Once it was a 2-score game again, it never got to 1. It only moved to 3 and beyond.
So, yeah, shout out to the defense for, I think, playing 45 or so really, really good minutes. Malcolm Ray is a guy we should also mention. You know, it doesn't show up really big in the box score with only 2 tackles, but I thought he was impactful in a backup role. You know, similar to what we talked about on offense, we asked about young defensive players that we might be able to see coming off this bye, who the coaches had some confidence in. We saw a good bit of Conrad Hussey, right? I mean, for a young safety to get that kind of playing time, I thought Conrad played really well. That hit was no joke. And, you know, stripping loose the ball, I think that extends the takeaway streak for Florida State too. So some positives there from Conrad. I think just another guy we want to see a little bit more of as we're kind of looking at how does this pass defense improve. Curt, your thoughts on Conrad and just some other guys there?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more of him. I mean, he played the third most snaps among safeties right behind Shaheem and Akeem Dent in that game, and I think made the most of it. And I mean, Mike Norvell kind of after he talked about, he gave his like, it's coach speaky, but it rings true of kind of like, we played him as much as we did. We played him when we did because we think he can help us win. That's kind of always been their mantra is it don't matter how old you are. If we think you can help us win now, you're going to play. And I think Conrad is showing, I memean, with the hit, it didn't mean anything, but a really impressive strip fumble on VT's last play of the game that let Florida State kneel it out. He's just he's got some good tendencies. He's good in coverage. I mean, his PFF grades is in the story today. He graded out well across the board. Good against the run, good tackling, good in coverage. I mean, he can do it all. It would seem, I mean, we kind of didn't know that was one of kind of in the early signing period. Actually, that was the early signing period. That was one of Florida State's big recruiting wins. That was a lot of the classes locked up. They didn't add a ton of guys in that period, but bringing in Conrad, beating out Miami, beating out Penn State for that South Florida kid is proving to be a pretty big deal early on here. I mean, it feels like next year when you're losing Akeem Dent could be very well stepping into a starting role. We'll have to see where KJ Bolden factors into that, supposing he signs. But it's a nice problem to have if you're Florida State.
Depth is a really good problem to have right now. Yeah, absolutely. And hey, this doesn't play into a second look thought on offense or defense. I thought the Brian Courtney run on that first PAT was an really interesting play call by Norvell to be aggressive. When you watch it, you know, again, a couple of times I watched it, Courtney had to read the defenders. He has to stiff arm an initial would-be tackler, and then he has to get the extra effort to get across the goal line. It really showed, hey, I'm getting the ball. I don't get the ball all that often. I've got an opportunity. I'm going to make something of it here. That was just a cool moment for a guy we haven't just seen a ton of. Is he a tight end? Is he a linebacker? He's probably a tight end now, but he might be a gadget type of guy that Florida State can use in a couple of different roles. So I thought that was kind of a cool little moment when you went back and watched the game film that maybe gets kind of lost in the shuffle of the big picture of things. So, okay, so Curt, we were leaving the stadium talking about story ideas, and we kind of kicked around, hey, this could be a weird Saturday. Texas losing. It was expected the Longhorns would maybe put away Oklahoma. We had no idea what would happen later in the night with Miami, not just losing to Georgia Tech, but losing the way they did. I think to some extent, we're going to nitpick. That's what the Florida State fans, the media, the beat writers are going to do. But man, at some point, we have to appreciate 5-0. I mean, this hasn't happened since 2015 at Florida State. There are a lot of other programs around the country that have already stumbled against some lesser opponents. So, Curt, let's talk a little bit about your column and just maybe big picture it, despite the warts, where Florida State is in your view.
Yeah, I mean, the frustration is understanding because you see the moments of brilliance, and you want to say, why can't this team be that team all the time? It feels like an unfortunate thing the Florida State fan base is going to have to deal with. Is I don't think we're ever going to see another 2013 Florida State team that steamrolled everybody, almost everybody. That was just so, I mean, it was a juggernaut where after that Clemson game, it felt inevitable that they were going to be in the national title game and probably going to win it. This team is very good. This team is very talented. This team has a lot of players that are going to play on Sundays. Probably not as many as that 2013 team, at least not that'll be drafted right away. But it's just, yeah, I mean, that set a standard that's probably never going to be attained again. And I think, I don't know, I think the fan base heard a lot of hype all off season from us. And there have been moments where they've lived up to that. And there have been moments where, frankly, they haven't. And that makes it frustrating. But yeah, I think yesterday, I mean, there are 22 unbeatens yet left going into yesterday and 8 lost. So we're down to 14 now, and a few more almost lost. I stayed up till 2 a.m. watching USC go to triple overtime against Arizona. I thought I was going to have to add USC to my column. Feels like a matter of time until I will. They feel they keep playing with fire. But yeah, I mean, it's you cannot winning these games, finishing these games. That Boston College game being what it was, you won. Plenty of teams have not won the situations they've been in like that this season. Miami just had a moment like that where they weren't supposed to be in that game. They looked like they were going to escape. Mario Cristobal did something inexcusable. I'm pretty mad I turned away from that game, by the way. I thought it was over. Same. I've seen the clips. I've enjoyed all the clips after, but I was not watching live when that happened because you assume when a game gets to there, you're like, oh, I'll go find something else. This one's over. But, I mean, it is a testament to Florida State that they're through what they are schedule-wise and 5-0.
Watching Mark Richt on that ACC Huddle post-game show last night, he was visibly, I think, hurt by, as a Miami grad, I think even articulated that way, as a Miami grad, you hurt. And it was unusual for me to hear Mark Richt be that candid. I think there was a part of him on that panel that was just, wow, what did we see? How do you make that kind of coaching mistake? There's assistant coaches, there's analysts, there's people in your ear saying, just take the knee here. That's all you got to do. But hey, we've seen some craziness in college football. We're not even halfway there. And it's good to be talking about Florida State being 5-0, I think is our big picture at this moment. But I want to talk a little bit about some of these flaws, because I think one of our big questions going into this bye week is, what is the identity of Florida State? What is the identity of Florida State's offense? Can Jordan Travis run the ball a little bit more? What is the deal with the offensive line, how they're using different running schemes, less counter this year than in past years? I'm of the feel that this was a really bad rush defense, but I will say Florida State's run game is on the way back I feel a lot better about it after kind of seeing what you can put together again with Bless Harris on the sideline. Still some things to be figured out, like which offensive linemen are the best fit at certain spots. Casey Roddick's PFF grade was really pretty low, for example. Are you kind of looking at options there at left guard? I'm not sure how all the pieces fit just yet. I feel like the running game looks better. I've got some more confidence there. Curt, you feel the same way? What do you feel about the run game at this point?
Yeah, I think of those three options, I would choose on the way back. I feel like where I kind of land. I mean, it's hard. It's impossible not to be encouraged by that. I think a big thing, I mean, watching that game, it feels like, I mean, so much of Florida State's run game is pulling the linemen, is running counter, is getting counter going. I mean, it's kind of become a running joke in college football at this point of opposing teams know Florida State's going to run counter, but can they stop it? Or is Florida State just so good at counter that they can't stop it? And I think it feels like for the first extended time this season, you saw that pulling working well. You saw the run game looking like it's supposed to. I think, I mean, it's been weird this season for sure. Watching, I mean, last year, run blocking was, I think, their strength more than pass blocking really as an offensive line. And I feel like for the 4 games this season, that flipped. And there's still room to be improved, like you said. I mean, when you have everybody, what does the starting 5 look like? It was encouraging to get Robert Scott back. He graded out well. Darius Washington bouncing between both tackle spots, graded out very well. There were 10 games last year where he played left tackle that did not go well. The Wake Forest game stands out. I mean, I have long been kind of banging the drum for Darius sticking to one position and then not playing this switching game with him. But darn if it isn't working for him. I mean, he has played three different positions. He's played center and both tackle spots this year, and I think he's like both graded out as one of FSU's better pass and run blockers. I mean, it's been impressive to see what he's done. But yeah, I mean, the running back wise, I think it's never really been about the running backs. I think it's been about setting up the running backs for success. And I think you really saw that for the first time Saturday. And I mean, I think truthfully, some games coming up will be harder. I'm not sure next week is that game. I feel like they might be able to string another one together. I can't say I've dove into the Syracuse rushing numbers yet, but I don't know. I think there's reasons to think they can build on it and have another strong week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Florida State on the right track here with the run game. My thing with Syracuse with Ferrante Gadsden still sidelined. Your weapons for Syracuse are essentially Garrett Schrader. I mean, you have a mobile quarterback without a whole lot of anything else. So I think we'll kind of have this as a storyline all week. Is if Johnny Wilson can't go, then what? What is Plan B? And obviously, Plan B looks different when you don't have a 6'7" receiver out there on the field, but you still have Keon Coleman. You still have a wealth of options, receivers, tight ends. I'm madly in love with using 2 tight ends. I like the versatility that those guys bring to the table in the run game, in the pass game. I would still use a lot of, let's say, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, and Trey Benson. I'd like to see some more Kentron if the staff feels good about him going out there and feels good about him coming off whatever injury this has been through camp and a good chunk of September. Mix in some more Ja'Kai Douglas, please. Would like to see that. Destin Hill, heck of a catch there. You want to see some of these younger guys that you've been looking to. Let's get them out there because you're up to game 6. It's really starting to be time to see, okay, how can you broaden the options there? And I think we did see a lot of broadening the options against Virginia Tech. Let's see that some more if you don't have Johnny Wilson. Curt, your thoughts here on just some of those guys that you'd like to see, some personnel groupings that you might want to see against Syracuse if there is no Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the names that I would throw out there first. I mean, Hakeem Williams, I don't know if you mentioned him, but as another freshman who he's played a good bit. Him and Destin are both. I mean, they already played in all 5 games where like they've already just blown by being eligible for a red shirt. I think they might have played in all 5. I would have to check that real quick. But yeah, I think Hakeem is a guy you could see benefit from that. I mean, they're not afraid to move the tight ends outside. We saw Morlock outside, some coming in motion. I think it frees up doing more with the tight ends if you're not expecting to have those 2 outside guys who are going to play a lot in Keon and Johnny. And I mean, I think it also I think it paves the path. If you look at the snap count numbers, Florida State didn't run a ton of offensive plays, which helps that for sure. But I think with how the game played out, you didn't even need Keon to play every game and play. Keon had played every play, a lot, or close to every play the last couple of weeks, just because of how those games played out going down to the wire. So the opportunity, if you're able to, I mean, you're a 3-score favorite. If you're able to build that lead and maybe not let them back in the game and kind of coast a little more and coast, but like coast and stay in control, it opens the path for you really might not miss Johnny because he might have only played 30, 35 plays for you.
Yeah, you're right, Curt, about the participation. Looking through some of the game notes while you're talking, Hakeem, game 5, he's played in all 5. Same with Destin. So yeah, I mean, you're playing these guys. It looks like you're going to redshirt a Vendravius Jacobs, unless something, and Goldie Lawrence, right? In case something might change down the road. You've got flexibility, but for now, that looks like the scenario the Florida State coaches are playing out. Okay, well, as we look toward the defense, I think we saw improvement up front as far as putting pressure on the quarterback. We did see some, design quarterback runs. They were successful with drones, moving the ball. I thought we saw a lot more DJ Lundy, Tatum Bethune. Was he limited? Was he injured?
He didn't play at all.
Tatum was credited with 1 tackle. So did he not play at all?
PFF didn't have him in there at all, I don't think. But either way, yeah, I know. We hear the dogs. The dogs have their opinions about Florida State's defense. It was a lot. It was early Blake Nicholson, like Conrad Hussey. I remarked, I think, to you and Nick up in the press box at one point, probably maybe second quarter, maybe late first quarter, of this is early Blake Nicholson out there, and I mean, it's the more experience you get him, the better spot you're in next year when you're replacing a number of guys. But I don't know. I mean, I think Mike Norvell seemed encouraged by even what he got from Pat Payton. I know he kind of candidly talked about not being happy with the Pat Payton he got in the BC game 2 weeks ago, and now 2 weeks in a row he's been really encouraged. What he's seen from Pat, kind of looking like the duo you thought you'd get in him and Verse. And I mean, Josh Farmer keeps stacking good games, and I'll tell you who really, I mean, is having a heck of a season. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but it's maybe a bit under the radar, is Renardo Green. Renardo Green has just been a baller. I mean, he does everything well. He tackles at a high rate. He covers well. He makes plays on the ball. He's a dog. I mean, he is everything you want from that veteran. He's a great example of a guy who was here in the bad times, like a Kalen DeLoach, like a Jordan Travis, was here in the struggles, was through that, came out the other side, and the kind of the coaching staff's faith in him and his faith in the coaching staff has made him just a really solid player. Yeah,
when the coaches are asked about Renardo, they use words like steady Eddie and very consistent. Mm-hmm. So I think there's not a lot of flash with how Renardo plays.
No, and he's not going to be a first-round pick because he's not the biggest guy. Like he's not 6'3", so you're not projecting him as he's not on all the mock draft boards. But I think he's a guy who could carve out a role for himself just because of how reliable he's become.
He's been a good guy for the Florida State defense to have. And I think we're seeing some individual growth within the defense. Yeah. You might not love the overall picture, I think, at times from the defense, but we're seeing some individual moments. And you mentioned Blake Nicholson. We talked about Malcolm Ray earlier. I thought he had a couple of good, pass rush reps. But okay, so I think that's a good kind of stopping point for us here Sunday night with the Osceola's Curt Weiler. We've talked a lot about Florida State, Virginia Tech. We talked a little bit about big picture moving into the week. We'll break down Syracuse a little bit later on in the week. They really struggled with that 40-7 loss to North Carolina. They look like a different team without Aronde Gadsden Jr., who's out for the season. Unfortunately for them with that, I think he's got a Liz Frank foot injury. And if you know anything about that, that's one of the worst ones that a lot of guys have had to battle. It's a long-term type of foot injury. But we'll have more on Florida State Syracuse as the week goes on. Go to theosceola.com. We got tons of recruiting coverage. We got some stories on, KJ Bolden. LJ McCray had his official visit. It was cool to see him wearing garnet and gold. He was out there at the Legacy Walk on the golf cart, ready to meet Mike Norvell and the team as they were, getting off the buses there. So hey, if you're reading tea leaves in Garnet and Gold, engaged throughout the visit, seemed to be enjoying himself. This was his only in-season visit
Yep.
of his
Announcing this
5.
month.
Announcing, he says later on in October might want to come back to Tallahassee just to get one more kind of feel for what he wants to do. So I think he's still got all, I believe, 5 options on the table, including Florida State. So we'll kind of see how that plays out.
As great as that Florida State recruiting class looks, a defensive end and edge rusher like him is a piece that you're like, could use another one of those, especially a established, high-ranked guy like him.
Right. If you're checking boxes of needs met through a class, use all of our coaching cliches that they use on signing day now in December. It feels like you could have a couple more guys in that front 7 just to feel good about the broad depth of your high school class. And of course, they'll use the portal to complement the high school guys, but LJ McRae feels like a pretty big piece, and we'll see how that plays out. We'll keep you posted on the Osceola.com. Well, again, we'll wrap it up Sunday night. Thanks for watching. If you aren't subscribing, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, the Osceola. Go to the Osceola.com. Check it out. All of our coverage there. If you like some of those premium stories, but you can't read them, jump on board now. Enjoy it. We've got our Second Look Sunday. You can read Curt's column. Great analysis from Jerry Cutts. He just wrote about the experience of going through the ticket presentation for season ticket holders, what kind of decisions he's facing, what kind of decisions many of you are facing as you evaluate what you want to do in 2024 and beyond, as Doak will take on a very, very new look. So if you're curious about some of those decisions ahead for you as a season ticket holder, or just curious, hey, what's happening? What is Michael Alford saying? What is Michael Alford doing? What are administrators within the athletics and the booster departments? What are they talking about? Jerry Cutts has a lot of those angles and storylines covered for us. And he has the perspective of having worked for the boosters, but also, as he says, I've been a season ticket holder for 40 plus years. So he's making a lot of these decisions, as many of you all are in the weeks to come here. Well, again, for Seminole Sidelines, brought to you by the Osceola, Curt Weiler, I'm Bob Ferrante. Hope you've had a great weekend. Stay tuned. We'll check you out on the Osceola.com. Talk to us on the message board if you want. Thanks for watching.